Hi everyone, thank you so much for joining me in this lesson. Today I just want to talk about skimming and scanning. These are very essential skills that you need for your International Second Language Proficiency Rating exam. Why? Because in the exam you'll be asked to read a passage or two passages. In my case, I had to read two passages. The first one, it was about a paragraph or two. I was told to read aloud for the examiner. The examiner wanted to see how I can read and pass on information through my reading. The second one, I was reading silently because she was going to ask questions about that passage after I read. Okay, so that is the setup of the exam. And then remember again, when you read, you're not going to write answers, but you can take notes. And once you take notes, the examiner will ask you questions. You need to answer verbally or orally. You need to answer orally, and you can take a glance at your notes, but you cannot read your notes when you're answering a question. So let me go through that again. The reading section of the exam, you read one passage aloud just to see how you read. The second one, you read silently, and the questions will be asked verbally, and you need to respond verbally. You don't write anything. Okay, that's what happened to me. So I had to do that. But I used two skills. Generally, there are three skills. There's skimming, there's scanning, and there's reading in depth. Now, you don't read for the first one. For the first one where you read aloud, I would want you to request if you can just skim through to know the words that you are going to read. So you can take a second or two to skim through. That's where skimming comes in handy, because skimming allows you to gain a broad understanding of the purpose, the structure, and the key theme of a passage. It will allow you to do that without going in depth. Scanning, on the other hand, it enables you to locate precise information such as names, dates, figures, and definitions. So you can scan for those. It's like when you've got a lens or a magnifier or something like that, a magnifying glass, you can scan for something so that you can see that. So by combining these two skills, you will move efficiently in the exam through multiple passages. Why? Because you can skim through to get an idea and scan to write a bit of notes. You can take notes as you are reading. You are allowed, and you'll be given a paper and a pencil. Okay, this is not the time to cram as if you are cramming and studying for the exam, because as you read, that is an exam already. So you are already in the exam. Preparation is now. When you are there reading, you are doing the exam. Okay, so let's start. Why should we know how to do how to use skimming and scanning especially when you are preparing for International Second Language Reading Test? The test presents you with texts, and these texts may include different types of documents like policy documents, academic summaries, workplace notices, and everyday information. So when you skim through, you'll be able to know what kind of passage you are talking about. And let me tell you what I did, what made me get a good grade. When I read something and when explaining, I was relating to say, oh, I read in the passage this, and actually from my experience, I see, I talk about it. I tell the examiner exactly what is in the passage and what I understood, and then I interpret that using my own experience, or expand that using my own experience. That shows that you understand, and you can also relate that to other experiences outside of the text. So you need that you need that the skill of skimming and scanning. Now, let's start with skimming. The best way to do skimming is look at the title and subheadings. If your passage has subheadings, mine didn't have subheadings, so I needed to read at least the first and last sentences of each paragraph for the first time, just to go through first and last sentence, and then I looked for the structure, like what transitions were used. That was when I was doing now my second reading, like what structures are used, transitions, what transitional phrases were there, like in addition, moreover, in contrast, away from this, using those. I was able to tell that, okay, while the author is listing these things, he has also put maybe the opposite or something that contradicts what he was saying at first, to give a balanced discussion. Then, apart from scanning for transitional phrases, not repeated keywords. What are the keywords? You can see if you scan through that there are some key repeated words in a passage. Then you can summarize in your own way. Then, apart from skimming and scanning a little, you can also intensify on scanning, especially when you write your own notes. Remember, you'll be allowed to write your own notes. So when you write your notes, you are going to be giving a glance to the notes. You'll be peeping. You'll be looking at the notes. So you'll be picking. So what you need to do, don't skim. You need to just scan with your eye. As you are talking, you are you're looking at your notes, but don't look at the notes and read the notes, because the reason why you wrote those notes is to help you remember. So don't be scared to look at the notes as you write, as you explain to the examiner, or as you respond to the examiner, but do not read like you are reading a passage from your notes. Scan for the points that you want to remember. Just scan quickly and find them back and talk from your head. So you can run your eyes along the lines and make sure everything, you look for that specific information. And as you are taking notes, actually, you can also circle, underline certain keywords. Those will help you to see specifically what information you are looking for. Then recognize variants and synonyms. What are some of the words? So why do I say so? If the author says the reason why the disease broke out was as a result of the lab nearby the village, right? In that lab, researchers were conducting research or studies on animals. You can see that we are talking about research in that. So you can also talk about, instead of research, maybe you can find a word that is equivalent to research. Instead of saying research, you can say a study. You can see scientists are doing research on animals. The equivalent or the synonym to that is that the researchers are conducting research on animals. So research and study in the context of the passage could be synonymous. So you don't exactly, if you just see research, you can use study, to show those differences and also to understand. And then before you respond, verify that what you are saying is in the passage. Okay, so through scanning, you can look at what the notes that you wrote, but don't look at the passage anyway. Look at the notes that you wrote. With scanning, you can respond, you can verify what you are saying, because you could be explaining to say, according to the passage that I read, I realized the author was talking about animals which are kept in a lab which was close to the people to the community where people live. It is from that community that animals escaped, and actually without these studies that were conducted, instead of saying without research. So verify information by scanning what you wrote. Okay, how can you integrate scanning and skimming under time pressure? If you are in the exam room, set a strict skimming limit. Allow no more than 30 to 45 seconds per passage. Answer questions by passage. Mark questions visually, right? When we are given a question, they ask you a question, you can write a keyword in that question so that you know what you are looking for in the passage, and maintain a balance between speed and accuracy. You can practice these things using any passage, and you can get it could be a newspaper, it could be anything, but just try to see if you can read something and ask yourself questions. Okay, otherwise I'll end here. Thank you so much for listening. I wish you the best. Bye bye.